We step up at the microphones, and it comes out something like this.
We came into the studios with Levi's and T-shirts, smoking cigarettes. The older guys were saying they're going to wreck the music business. Rock and roll, still a dirty word to most of the musicians.
Our guys, we welcome the rock and roll.
They played for so many people in so many different styles.
In the studio, there's the same guys always.
There was probably 20 musicians that were doing all the sessions.
It was the same guys doing Nat King Cole that was doing the Beach Boys.
The Wrecking Crew, they were the ones with all the spirit and all the know-how, especially for rock and roll music.
Producers presented the musicians with a roadmap. It was just chord symbols.
They put notes on paper, but that's not music.
These musicians added a little flavor to it that was unexpected.
You keep saying
We made up a lot of arrangements ourselves.
We would either augment or totally replace a group.
you call love.
The public was oblivious that there was this secret star maker machinery.
I had no idea that people didn't play their own records until the Monkees came along.
And now someone
We were so busy.
I was making more money than the President of the United States.
7 records of the year.
It was unbelievable.
I don't know how those guys could have worked anymore unless they didn't sleep at all.
are gonna walk all over you.
Here's the way that the beat goes on, sound of when we first heard it. La-di-da-da-da. Yeah, I said, uh-oh. The third line I came up with was...
Producers made a big mistake when they didn't put the credits on the back of the albums.
One of the reasons they left the names off was they just wanted the sales. Who created it? Gee, that was incidental.
The Wrecking Crew, they're just great.
They had the magic touch.
The musicians were really the unsung heroes of all those hit records.
They were the stone cold rock and roll profession, and there may never be a group of that caliber again.
How amazing does that film look? It is, of course, called The Wrecking Crew, and we are joined by documentary filmmaker Denny Tedesco to tell us more about this amazing story.
How are you?
Excellent. How are you, Denny?
So we've seen a little teaser here, but tell us about The Wrecking Crew and your connection.
Well, I started this, it was 1996. My dad was Tommy Tedesco. He was a guitar player. He unfortunately was diagnosed with cancer, and I knew there was a great story behind his and his fellow, musicians. So basically, I put together a group of them and started filming.
How incredible was that to watch your dad, a member of the Wrecking Crew, sit around with all these guys that literally made music history and just kind of listen to them talk?
Well, it's funny you said that because I my first scene, or the first time we shot, I put them at a round table. And I kind of based it on 2 movies I love, Broadway Danny Rose, where they talk about Danny Rose, these writers, and the other one was Diner, where they sit around a coffee table.
Yeah, brilliant.
And musicians are like that. They just, they kind of banter.
Yeah.
So I called it the quartet without instruments.
Right, there's a rhythm to the conversation.
There is, and you just kind of let it go. I mean, all I did was, I wanted to be a voyeur. And that's kind of what I wanted to do, is always be a voyeur on that.
And how amazing, having that time with your dad to document his history, because losing the history of these people in the Wrecking Crew would be absolutely tragic. But we have to explain why people have not seen this film yet. It's a labor of love for you. It's 15 years in the making. But why is it not out?
Well, I thought it was going to be a real simple, put together, and everybody said, this is great. And they said, there's a lot of music. There's 133 music cues in it, and you'll know 128.
Yeah.
Everything is from the hits. Yeah. So people said, well, this is great, but you'll never get it finished. I said, why? I said, you'll never get the labels and the publishers to come together. I said, well, you can't stop there. And I just said, I kept going and going and going, hoping, for some break.
Yeah.
You do as a filmmaker, you do all the things you're not supposed to do. You mortgage the house, you do this,
do the credit cards, the full pull.
The credit cards is like kiss of death. And finally got to 2008. We crossed a line, as they said. I went too far, meaning you got to finish it now.
Yeah.
So I finished it, got it to the film festivals, did extremely well, 12 awards. Huge reviews.
Well, the reaction people have when they see this, but is it just a financial question?
It is. Basically,
there's
2 words wrong with the film. It's called documentary and then music documentary. They just tend not to be, money makers.
Yeah.
I just want it out there to tell their story, and but distributors look at it and go, well, and it's like,
how many seats are we going to get?
Yeah, exactly. How many
what are
DVDs
sales?
and this and that. But in the end, I just kept going. Donations started coming in. We went through a 501c in America.
Yeah.
And we've nickel, dime, dollar.
And you're almost there.
Almost there. We're $150,000 away from getting it to where a distributor may jump in. If not, I'll just start selling
What
it.
I can't believe about this is, I didn't know this. I didn't know this about the music industry.
Yeah.
I didn't know this about that phase in the music industry, that some of these incredible, iconic songs
Because
that you hear.
rock and roll, you got to realize, it is a business. It's always been a business. My dad said there's music and there's a music business. They don't always mix.
Right.
And he said, people said, were you upset that you didn't get paid or that you didn't get extra for creating these big hits?
Yeah, you didn't get credit on the album
albums.
cover.
He says, listen, I made hundreds of hits. He says, but I had thousands of bombs.
Right.
He says, I never gave the guy back his money. So.
How much did you learn about your dad making this film?
A lot. I knew a lot. But what really was the greatest moments for me in this journey is when someone tells me a story about my father, and it's nothing to do about his guitar playing. It's about him as a person. And that is the greatest feeling as a son, and it happens a lot. He did something for someone. It's like, really? He did that for you?
Or little stories that you've heard maybe before, but then to see them in that round table setting and hear them fleshed out by other people and their perspectives and where they were.
Yeah, there's always new stories I've never heard. It's like, oh my God.
It's crazy.
Now, give us the rundown. We saw a few familiar faces in the trailer for the movie. Give us a rundown of some of the people.
Well, Glenn Campbell is a perfect example. Glenn is a session player first. He was one of the guys. Leon Russell was one of the guys. Those two are the only ones that became, artists in themselves.
Yeah.
Herb Alpert's in it, Brian Wilson's in it, Roger McGuinn of the Byrds is in it, Cher's in it, Dick Clark, pre-stroke, thank goodness.
Yeah. Mickey Dolenz.
Mickey Dolenz, Peter Tork, Al Jardine. We just kept building and building, and we got to that point.
It's also really cool for someone like me that I don't play music. I don't have that ability, but to hear
I
the
don't
story,
either, by the way.
Yeah, but to hear the story of the songs, like, the Wrecking Crew, and they're all sitting around and they're talking about it, and they're talking about these songs. You know them off by heart right away, and then they talk about the riffs and how they changed the song in the studio and little licks they came up with.
It was
and
their job.
It's fascinating to see how it builds, and it is a language. It's organic.
Like I was saying earlier, it was at its infancy. Rock and roll was so the record companies didn't trust a lot of the groups to play.
Yeah.
They weren't good recording musicians. In those days, it was the technology. You had to have 6, 7, or whatever your musicians in there, and you had to nail it.
And you had to have a lot of talent that we don't see today.
And they never played with that equipment. They never used the amps and the soundboards and like, ugh.
So these guys come in and they knock out 3 or 4 songs in 3 hours, and they had to do it. So everybody had to be in tune. Everybody had to be on time. Someone blows it, you're blowing it for everybody. Now you just can't pop in and take out that solo or this and that. So that's why they had to be there.
And the other thing we have to mention is there is a screening here in Vancouver, and people can see the movie.
Yes.
So maybe you can tell us about the when and the where.
It's at the Denman on Sunday, this Sunday, at 3:30 and 6:30. And last time I was here for the 2008 Film Festival, we did extremely well.
Yeah. Nice.
A lot of great fans. Elvis Costello came.
Not too shabby.
No. I wasn't here for that screening. I actually asked. Someone says Elvis was there. I said, which Elvis? I wanted to make sure.
It's Vancouver, right?
I didn't know. I just wanted to make sure I had it right.
Just, you've been working on this since '97.
96.
96. Here we sit in 2012. But I think probably the greatest thing about this is this wouldn't get boring for you. I don't think ever.
Someone asked me that recently. Someone says, do you get tired of talking about it? I said, you know what? I enjoy every time I see it with audiences. Every audience is different, and it's great because I love watching the smiles come across their faces.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's tears at the end, and it's really I know what these musicians did. I know what the music means to people. especially of, you know, a certain generation. It is the soundtrack of our lives.
Yeah, well, and it's a legacy from a you know, a son to a father as well.
Yeah,
It's just a
I
beautiful
appreciate
thing.
it. Yeah.
Well, congratulations
Thank
on
you.
completing the film. Now we
Thank
just
you.
have to get it out there, and you can be a part of that
Yeah,
if
you
you want
can.
to. You can go to the website to find out all the information about where there's a screening near you, but the one in Vancouver is happening this Sunday for the Wrecking Crew. Make sure that you check it out. You can go to wreckingcrewfilm.com to find out more. Find them on Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely. And make a donation as well. Go to the screening, 3:30, 6:30, as Fiona mentioned, at Denman Cinema, 1779 Comox Street. And there is a Q&A with Denny to follow the screening as well, so you can ask him all the questions that you're probably yelling at us right now. Why didn't you ask him about this?
Thanks so
man.
much.
Pleasure.
Thank you. We're going to take a really quick break.